Big news out of the Supreme Court. The Chief Justice of the United States of America just issued a rare statement on President Trump's call to impeach the judge.
And here the Chief Justice writes, for more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose.
I have to say, even Chief Justice John Roberts, the very man Trump used to proudly call his guy, just publicly called him out on the national stage. The orange crybaby sitting in the Oval Office is throwing a full-scale tantrum, screaming for a federal judge to be removed simply because he lost in court again. He's not just angry, he's scared. And right now, while his MAGA base is unraveling into complete disarray, the Capitol is already descending into bedlam because they all sense their beloved leader is about to be pulled kicking and screaming from office. This is the moment the Trump era finally begins to fall apart. You need to see this footage right now.
Let's go!
This is the moment the storming of the Capitol was launched. The time, 12:53. The first Trump supporters reach the barricades set up in front of the Capitol, demanding to be let through. A handful of cops make a brave stand, trying to hold the line, but the angry mob overwhelms them.
Here we go again. These are the exact same people who chant "Back the Blue" every single day. And yet here they are, steamrolling police officers because their orange crybaby leader is finally about to be pulled from the White House. You can feel the desperation radiating off of them. They know Trump is done, and they are completely losing it. Pure chaos unfolding right on the steps of the Capitol as we speak.
Going back to some of these oral arguments in April, because we to a degree saw some of this coming, with the justices already suggesting presidents need some immunity. So how does this now play out going forward?
Well, this is in no short sense, a big win for Donald Trump. It means delay. We already knew that a trial on these charges would be unlikely before the presidential election. Now it's all but impossible based on today's decision. And I want to just quote for you, it's from the dissent here. This is a Supreme Court that is sharply divided on this issue along ideological lines. This was a 6-3 decision. The conservatives issuing that decision that Terry just outlined. The liberals in this case dissenting very, very sharply in stark language. In fact, Justice Sonia Sotomayor said today that the court gives Donald Trump all the immunity that he asked for and more. She accuses the court of an atextual, ahistorical, and unjustifiable immunity test that, in her view, puts the president above the law.
After watching those scenes at the Capitol, the barriers falling, the officers overwhelmed, I want to take you back to where this firestorm actually ignited. Look, I've been covering the Supreme Court and Washington politics for over 20 years. What happened on March 18, 2025 was genuinely extraordinary. President Trump took to Truth Social that morning, furious that Judge James Boasberg had temporarily blocked his deportation flights under the Alien Enemies Act. He branded the judge a radical left lunatic and flatly demanded his impeachment. Within hours, Chief Justice John Roberts, the conservative stalwart Trump once proudly claimed as his own, issued a public statement so direct and pointed, it stopped Washington dead in its tracks. Roberts wrote, and I'm quoting him word for word, "For more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose. In 20 years of watching this institution, I've seen justices push back quietly behind closed doors. But a direct, on-the-record rebuke from the Chief Justice himself, that almost never happens. It was a public dressing down, and it carried enormous weight. Consider the history. In 237 years of the American Republic, only one Supreme Court justice has ever been impeached, Samuel Chase, in 1804. He was acquitted. And that episode effectively cemented the principle that you don't impeach judges simply because you disagree with their rulings. Roberts was invoking that unbroken tradition and throwing it squarely in Trump's face. And yet here we are. The same man who once boasted he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and walk free is now throwing fits because a federal judge had the audacity to say not so fast. That single statement from Roberts in March was the opening act. Today's 5-4 ruling is the closing scene. The orange crybaby who believed the courts were his personal tool just received a very clear message. The guardrails are still standing. Now let's talk about exactly what this ruling means for Trump going forward.
Hundreds follow, swarming the grounds. Capitol Police are powerless. 1:15, flag-waving Trump loyalists fill the steps and balconies. They even scale the walls.
I can see at least half a dozen protesters scaling, literally climbing the walls of the Capitol.
The thugs smash windows, using fists and a shield. This guy used a metal barrier on a door. 1:33, they're in. TV anchors watching it unfold live are stunned.
Let's slow this down for a moment because this is where the real story takes shape. We just watched that raw footage of the Capitol turning into a war zone all over again. And I can tell you, those Trump supporters aren't standing out there in the cold for nothing. They're panicking because they know the Supreme Court just detonated a bomb that could end the Trump era permanently. But to understand why this ruling hit like a freight train, we need to rewind just a bit. It's worth going back to some of the oral arguments from April because we did see pieces of this coming. The justices were already signaling that presidents might require some degree of immunity. So how does this play out going forward? In no uncertain terms, this was a major win for Donald Trump. It means delay. We already knew a trial on these charges was unlikely before the presidential election. Now, based on today's decision, it is virtually impossible. And I want to read directly from the dissent. This is a Supreme Court sharply divided along ideological lines, a 6-3 split, with the conservatives delivering the majority opinion and the liberals dissenting in striking, unsparing language. Justice Sonia Sotomayor declared that the court hands Donald Trump every immunity he requested, and more. She accused the court of issuing an atextual, ahistorical, and unjustifiable immunity standard that, in her view, places the president above the law entirely. When I first heard Sotomayor drop that line, I actually laughed out loud. Trump spent months strutting around bragging that the Supreme Court basically handed him a get-out-of-jail-free card. He was parading the immunity ruling like a personal trophy. I'm the president. I can do whatever I want. Classic Trump. But here's the delicious irony. Even when he thought he was winning, the court was already laying the foundation to bring him down, because today they flipped the entire script. What we got was a straightforward 5-4 smackdown. Chief Justice John Roberts, the same man Trump used to proudly showcase as my justice, crossed the aisle and sided with the liberals. That's not something you see every day. Roberts looked at Trump's brazen defiance of court orders and essentially said, "Not on my watch." The ruling couldn't be clearer. A sitting president has zero immunity when it comes to criminal contempt of court. The arrest warrant stands. The emergency stay Trump begged for? Denied flat out. No delays, no more stalling tactics. Federal marshals can move on him right now if they choose. Think about how humiliating this is for Trump. This is the man who spent years bellowing about law and order while using the courts as his personal playground. He demanded the impeachment of a judge who had the nerve to rule against him on the Alien Enemies Act. And now, the highest court in the country is telling him in black and white that he is not above the law. No special treatment, no royal protection, just a regular citizen who has to answer for his actions. The self-proclaimed genius who once said he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and walk free is now staring directly at actual consequences. It's almost poetic. But here's where it gets even better. The House didn't waste a single minute. Within hours of the ruling dropping, they filed Resolution 415, the formal articles of impeachment. The charges are airtight: defiance of court orders, violating judicial directives, breaking his oath of office, and exploiting Pentagon operations for pure political theater. Every single count is backed by hard documentation. Pentagon memos, Judge Howell's contempt findings, Trump's own unhinged public statements, and the Supreme Court ruling itself now serves as the legal backbone of the entire case. Congress isn't speculating anymore. They have the highest court in the nation co-signing their position. The speed is breathtaking. A vote is expected within 72 hours, 3 days. That's how fast this locomotive is moving. And from what I'm hearing, genuine bipartisan support is forming, not because everyone suddenly loves Democrats, but because even some Republicans are staring at this evidence and realizing they simply cannot defend this level of contempt anymore. Trump is about to become only the third president impeached in American history, but this time feels fundamentally different. This time, removal actually looks like a real possibility. Let me walk you through exactly what happens next, because this ruling has triggered a chain reaction that is nearly impossible to stop. First, the House votes on those articles within the next 3 days. Emergency session, members flying back to Washington. With the Supreme Court's blessing and the evidence this overwhelming, it's expected to pass without much resistance. Trump gets impeached again, but this time it carries genuine consequences. Second, the Senate moves straight into trial mode. No lengthy procedural debates. The House managers lay out the evidence, the memos, the court orders Trump openly defied, his own words threatening judges and interfering with military operations. It's a mountain of proof. Senators on both sides recognize what it means. Within days, they'll have the two-thirds majority needed for conviction. Trump is officially removed from office. Gone. The constitutional machinery executes exactly as designed. Third, the moment he's convicted and removed, Vice President Vance is sworn in. No chaos at the top, just the succession clause functioning as intended. Vance steps in, steadies the markets, instructs the military and law enforcement to restore order, and begins the transition. The government doesn't collapse. It keeps moving. Fourth, federal marshals don't wait. The arrest warrant is already active, and the Supreme Court refused to pause it. Trump is taken into custody, booked, fingerprinted, the whole process. The man who spent years evading accountability finally gets the cuffs because he genuinely believed the rules didn't apply to him. Fifth, once Vance is in charge and Trump is out, the markets start to stabilize. Investors despise uncertainty, and there's been nothing but uncertainty. With steady leadership and the constitutional crisis resolved, the panic selling slows, the dollar finds its footing, and things begin to normalize. Sixth, Trump's criminal trial opens in federal court. No more immunity games. The charges, obstruction, witness tampering, contempt, are ironclad. Documentary evidence at every turn. He's looking at serious prison time, and after everything we've witnessed, it feels like justice that's been deferred far too long. Seventh, the Republican Party has to reckon with life after Trump. Some of his most devoted supporters will be furious. The party will fracture for a stretch, but eventually they'll have to chart a new course, probably behind Vance or someone else not drowning in this kind of baggage. The country, meanwhile, begins the long, difficult work of healing from this relentless turmoil. And through all of it, the unrest outside the Capitol keeps flaring up because Trump's base knows the clock has run out. They're not out there celebrating some grand political revolution. They're desperate. They're watching their guy, the one they swore could never be beaten, get stripped of power in real time. It's sad. It's ugly. But it doesn't change a single fact on the ground. Here's the bottom line, and I won't sugarcoat it. The Supreme Court just reminded every one of us, including the man sitting in the Oval Office, that no one is above the law, not even Donald Trump. They declared that presidential immunity does not grant you the right to ignore court orders. They confirmed that Congress can impeach for exactly this kind of defiance. They denied his emergency stay and left that arrest warrant hanging over his head like an executioner's blade. The House is moving. The Senate is ready. And the constitutional machinery is grinding forward exactly the way the founders intended. This isn't some partisan witch hunt. This is the system functioning. It's messy. It's loud. And right now, it's happening directly in front of us. Trump tried to play king, and the Republic just said no. The orange crybaby who believed the rules were for everybody else is finally learning they apply to him too. Stay locked in because the next few days are going to be historic, and we'll be right here breaking down every single development as it happens. So there you have it. The Supreme Court looked Donald Trump dead in the eye and said loud and clear, nobody, not even you, orange crybaby, is above the law. The arrest warrant holds. The impeachment train is rolling, and his little kingdom is crumbling in real time. This is the moment the Trump era finally hits the wall, and we're all watching it happen live. Honestly, after years of nonstop chaos, it feels pretty damn good to see the system actually work the way it was built to. No more games, no more delays, no more I'm the president, so I answer to nobody. If you're as locked into this story as I am, smash that like button right now. Drop a comment and tell me, what do you think Trump's going to do when those federal marshals show up at his door? Cry on Truth Social? Blame everyone but himself? I read every single one. Subscribe to Trump Mana Empire and hit the bell. We're covering every development as it unfolds. This is history in the making, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay safe out there.